The military courtroom at Naval Base San Diego buzzed with predatory energy as cameras flashed around Lieutenant Commander Severine Blackwood. CNN, Fox News, and military correspondents jockeyed for position while sketch artists captured her stone-faced composure. The morning's headlines screamed across news tickers, "Fake female SEAL on trial," and "First woman's lie exposed." For 18 months she had been America's most polarizing figure, the first woman to claim Navy SEAL qualification, now sitting in handcuffs branded as a fraud who had cost American lives. The prosecution had spent 3 brutal weeks systematically destroying her reputation. Commander Westlake's opening had been surgical, painting Sevy as a delusional fantasist who fabricated heroic operations to compensate for gender-based inadequacy. Expert witnesses testified about her pathological need for masculine validation. Military psychologists dissected her hero complex with clinical detachment, their words echoing through primetime television segments and social media debates. Morning light filtered through tall windows, casting harsh shadows across the polished floor where Sevy sat with perfect military posture despite the handcuffs' weight. Her dark blue dress uniform bore minimal decorations, deliberate prosecution strategy to make her claimed accomplishments seem impossible. A nearly imperceptible scar ran from her left temple to jaw, earned during Operation Shadowfall, though she could never say so. The mark served as a constant reminder of battles fought in silence, victories achieved without recognition. The packed courtroom felt like a gladiatorial arena designed for her destruction. Flag officers occupied the front row, their brass gleaming under fluorescent lights, some openly skeptical of female integration into special operations. Behind them, journalists scribbled notes while spectators craned their necks to glimpse the woman the San Diego Union Tribune had dubbed the SEAL imposter. Television cameras captured every micro-expression, feeding a national audience hungry for her downfall. The whispers were relentless daggers piercing the formal atmosphere. First woman to claim Trident qualification, obviously couldn't handle the pressure. Political correctness gone wrong. 2 good men died because of her fantasy. Each comment landed like physical blows, but Sevy's expression remained carved from granite. Prosecutor Commander Westlake arranged documents with theatrical precision, occasionally glancing toward Sevy with barely concealed triumph. His team of 3 junior JAG officers surrounded him like sharks scenting blood, confident in their seemingly airtight case built on official denials and convenient classification. They possessed witnesses, documentation, and expert testimony, all proving that Lieutenant Commander Blackwood had never participated in the classified operations she claimed. "They're going for the death penalty of military careers," whispered defense attorney Lieutenant Commander Orion Apprentice, leaning toward Sevy. His voice carried 18 months of mounting desperation as he watched his client's reputation systematically destroyed. Dishonorable discharge, federal prison, complete disgrace. "For the record, you need to give me something, anything to counter their narrative." Sevy kept her eyes fixed forward, her voice barely audible above the courtroom's ambient noise. "You know I cannot or will not." Apprentice's frustration leaked through professional composure, his career hanging in the balance alongside hers. "They have 3 witnesses prepared to testify you were never in Yemen. Drake will crucify you on the stand." The corner of Sevy's mouth tightened, the only crack in her facade. For months she had maintained absolute silence about the classified operations that would vindicate her, bound by oaths that meant more than personal freedom. Some secrets were worth dying for, worth being destroyed. In the back row, a naval intelligence officer in dress blues checked his secure phone with increasing urgency, encrypted messages flowing between the Pentagon and Coronado. Something was building beyond this courtroom, forces gathering in shadowed corridors where the truth about Operation Shadowfall still lived, waiting for the right moment to emerge and shatter the carefully constructed lie. "All rise," the bailiff's voice sliced through hostile murmurs, like a blade through silk. "This court-martial is now in session." The Honorable Captain Lell presided. Captain Lell entered with the bearing of a man who had overseen 3 decades of military justice, his weathered face showing no emotion as he surveyed the circus before him. Cameras, reporters, and spectators treated his sacred courtroom like entertainment, their presence a necessary evil in this high-profile case. "Be seated," he commanded with parade ground authority that instantly silenced the gallery. "For the record, this courtroom will maintain military discipline regardless of external interest. His steel-gray gaze swept the gallery with obvious distaste for the media-feeding frenzy that had consumed this case. Social media had already convicted Sevi in the court of public opinion, fake seal trending nationally, memes mocking participation trophy warfare, and endless debates about women in combat roles using her trial as ammunition for their argument. Commander Westlake rose with predatory confidence, his opening statement delivered like a prosecutor seeking the death penalty. Your Honor, for the record, the prosecution will prove beyond reasonable doubt that Lieutenant Commander Severine Blackwood falsified military records, committed stolen valor by claiming operations and decorations she never earned, displayed gross insubordination during a classified mission, and through her negligence and reckless incompetence, directly caused the deaths of 2 United States Navy SEALs. The gallery's reaction was immediate and vicious. Whispers became accusatory hisses that filled the formal space with poison. Obviously couldn't handle the pressure. They let her play SEAL and good men died. Diversity hire gone wrong. Each word landed like artillery fire, but Sevi's expression remained carved from stone, betraying nothing of the rage burning within. Westlake continued his character assassination with surgical precision, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. We will present evidence that Lieutenant Commander Blackwood manipulated administrative systems, exploited political pressure for female integration, and when placed in actual combat situations, made decisions that prioritized her personal glory over mission success and team safety. Sevi's hands formed white-knuckled fists beneath the defense table, the only outward sign of the fury consuming her soul. She had led successful extractions under impossible conditions, saved 17 hostages, including senators' children, and earned every decoration through blood and sacrifice. But Operation Shadowfall's classified status meant she could only sit in silence while her honor was systematically destroyed for public consumption. When Lieutenant Commander Orion Apprentice rose for his opening statement, sweat beaded his forehead despite the courtroom's aggressive air conditioning. This is impossible, he thought desperately. How do I defend someone when every piece of evidence that could save her is classified? His earlier confidence had evaporated under mounting evidence and official denials from the highest levels of government. For the record, Your Honor, my client's service record speaks for itself, he began weakly, knowing the futility of his position, or it would if proper security clearance existed to review classified materials central to this case. Objection. Westlake interjected smoothly, already anticipating this desperate strategy like a chess master seeing moves ahead. Counsel implies the existence of classified materials that the Pentagon has explicitly confirmed do not exist. Sustained. Captain Lell responded without hesitation, his voice carrying finality. Mr. Apprentice, for the record, this court has reviewed all relevant materials through proper channels. The Department of Defense has confirmed through official testimony that no records exist supporting your client's claimed operation. As Apprentice fumbled through his increasingly futile defense, Sevi remained perfectly composed, betraying nothing of the classified truths that could vindicate her but would violate oaths more sacred than personal freedom. Outside the courtroom, the media circus continued growing, feeding America's appetite for her destruction. The first day proceeded with a parade of administrative witnesses, each confirming that official records showed no evidence of Sevi's claimed operations, building an airtight case of systematic deception. 3 days later, sunlight slanted differently through the courtroom windows as prosecution witnesses delivered their carefully rehearsed character assassination. Sevi looked visibly thinner, her uniform hanging loose at the collar. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights in military detention, but her spine remained steel straight, her bearing still that of an elite warrior. The morning brought Commander Harrison Drake to the witness stand, her former commanding officer and the architect of her destruction. At 50, his salt and pepper hair and impressive ribbon rack projected distinguished service, though appearances masked a corrupt soul. She knows too much, Drake thought as he took the oath, his mind racing through contingencies. If she talks, I'm facing treason charges. This has to end. Commander Drake, Westlake began with theatrical precision. For the record, did Lieutenant Commander Blackwood ever serve under your command in any special operations capacity? For the record, Lieutenant Commander Blackwood served exclusively as an intelligence analyst, Drake replied with practiced sincerity that made Sevi's jaw clench imperceptibly. She consistently overstepped her authority, attempting to insert herself into operational planning where she had no qualification or experience. The lie hung in the air like poison gas, each word carefully crafted to destroy her credibility. Sevi remembered briefing Drake personally after Shadowfall, presenting evidence of his intelligence leaks to private military contractors. That briefing had sealed her fate. Drake knew she had to be destroyed before she could expose his treason. And regarding the Yemen operation specific, Drake's expression hardened with calculated rage, his performance worthy of an Academy Award. She disobeyed direct orders during the Al-Mahar operation, abandoning her designated post to join a forward assault team. Her unauthorized actions and tactical incompetence resulted in unnecessary casualties. 2 of our finest operators died because of her reckless need to prove herself in combat. When Apprentice began cross-examination, his mounting desperation showed through his professional veneer. Commander Drake, for the record, what specifically was the objective of Operation Al-Mahara? That information remains classified at the highest levels. The precise geographical location, classified for ongoing operational security. The names of team members allegedly endangered by my client. All personnel identities remain classified. The classified wall stood impenetrable, protecting Drake's lies behind legitimate security concerns. As he continued his testimony, Sevi's mind flashed back to the brutal reality of that night in Yemen. Sand-filled air thick with gunfire, muzzle flashes cutting through the darkness like deadly fireflies. Her team pinned down by superior forces, radio chatter screaming for immediate extraction. Phoenix 1. This is Shadowfall, actual, she whispered into her comm, blood seeping from a shrapnel wound in her shoulder. We have 17 hostages, including HVTs Alpha and Bravo, requesting immediate QRF support. The enemy was closing in, their spotlights sweeping the compound. She made the call that saved everyone. All teams, execute emergency extraction protocol. I'll hold the rear. Her M4 barked repeatedly as she provided cover, enabling the helicopter extraction that brought everyone home alive. Objection, Your Honor, Apprentice said, approaching the bench with barely controlled frustration. For the record, it's remarkably convenient that everything potentially exonerating my client is classified while everything damaging flows freely through official channel. Captain Lel's expression remained granite hard. Classification determinations have been made by proper authorities according to established protocol. Counselor, proceed with permissible questions. The naval psychiatrist who followed delivered perhaps the most vicious testimony. Dr. Morrison, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, diagnosed Sevi's pathological need for masculine validation and elaborate fantasy construction to compensate for gender-based inadequacy. For the record, he explained with clinical detachment while spectators nodded approvingly, it's not uncommon for individuals who feel marginalized to create elaborate delusions of exceptional achievement. In Commander Blackwood's case, these fantasies manifested as impossible claims of leading elite special operations. Each word was a scalpel, dissecting her character while she sat powerless to respond, bound by oaths stronger than self-preservation. During the afternoon recess, Apprentice cornered Sevi in a sterile conference room where fluorescent lights hummed overhead like electronic vultures. His tie hung loose, sweat stains visible under his arms despite the air conditioning. 18 months of defending the impossible had aged him visibly, gray threading through his hair. Sevi, I'm drowning here, he said, dropping all pretense of professional distance. How do I save someone who won't save herself? He thought desperately. For the record, I cannot defend you if you won't give me ammunition. The classified operation records that would prove your innocence. Where are they? Who authorized their removal? They don't exist anymore, she interrupted with quiet finality, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Purged, sanitized, disappeared into the digital void like they never happened. Apprentice stared at her as if she'd spoken in tongues, his legal mind struggling to process the impossibility. That's impossible. Classification systems have redundancies, backup protocols, congressional oversight. Not even the Secretary of Defense could authorize complete elimination of operational records. You're asking the wrong questions, Orion. Her voice remained controlled, but intensity burned behind her eyes like molten steel. Stop thinking about what happened to the records. Ask yourself, who benefits if I'm completely discredited and silenced forever? You're facing dishonorable discharge in federal prison. Help me help you. Sevi met his gaze directly for the first time since the trial began, her eyes reflecting years of carrying secrets that could topple governments. Some oaths matter more than personal freedom. When court resumed, Westlake delivered his final masterstroke, a surprise witness who would cement Sevy's destruction. For the record, Your Honor, the prosecution calls Chief Petty Officer Talon Riker. As Riker strode to the witness stand, Sevy's carefully maintained composure cracked for the first time. This muscular man in his mid-30s projected the confident bearing of a special operator, his uniform perfectly pressed, decorations precisely aligned. But something was fundamentally wrong with the picture he presented. Easy money, Riker thought as he raised his right hand for the oath. Drake promised me a clean record, and a contractor job after this. All I have to do is stick to the script. He had spent weeks memorizing the fabricated details, practicing his testimony until it sounded natural. She leaned toward Apprentice with sudden urgency, her voice barely a whisper. For the record, that man was never in Yemen. I've never seen him before in my life. Riker's testimony proved devastating with surgical precision, each lie delivered with the casual authority of lived experience. He described in convincing detail every alleged fabrication, every supposed moment of incompetence during Operation Sevy claimed to have led. His voice carried the ring of authenticity that only came from careful coaching. For the record, Commander Blackwood was categorically not part of the Yemen extraction team, Riker stated with unwavering certainty, his eyes meeting those of gallery members for maximum impact. I served as team leader for that operation, and I can personally confirm she was nowhere near the target zone. Her claims of leading the mission represent complete and dangerous fabrication. As Westlake guided Riker through a detailed account that systematically dismantled every aspect of Sevy's service record, she studied him with the analytical focus that had made her an exceptional intelligence operative. Something about his uniform arrangement caught her trained eye, subtle errors in service ribbon placement and the positioning of his trident pin that contradicted his claimed operational experience. These were mistakes only someone intimately familiar with special operations protocols would recognize. His combat action ribbon positioned incorrectly, his Navy Achievement Medal lacking the V device for valor, his trident worn too high on his uniform. For the first time since the trial began, a ghost of a smile touched Sevy's lips. The enemy had finally made a critical error, and she was about to exploit it with devastating precision. She quickly scribbled detailed notes and passed them to Apprentice, who read them with growing confusion before beginning his cross-examination with renewed purpose. Apprentice consulted Sevy's notes with theatrical precision, his confidence returning as he sensed blood in the water. The detailed uniform irregularities she had identified gave him ammunition he desperately needed. Chief Riker, for the record, you testified about serving with SEAL Team 3 during Operation Serpent Hammer. Could you describe the specific mission patch for that operation? Riker hesitated for the first time, uncertainty flickering across his previously confident features. What the hell was the patch design? He thought frantically. Drake never mentioned specific patch. The silence stretched long enough for several gallery members to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Standard SEAL Team 3 insignia with a snake motif, he finally answered, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead despite the courtroom's cool temperature. Interesting detail. Apprentice moved closer to the witness stand, his voice carrying newfound authority. For the record, would it surprise you to learn that Commander Vartanian wasn't assigned to SEAL Team 3 until April 2022, or that Operation Serpent Hammer was exclusively a Marine Corps mission in the Helmand province, not a SEAL operation? The courtroom's energy shifted palpably as if lightning had struck. Riker's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard, his carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. There might be some confusion about operation naming conventions. We sometimes use different code names for security purposes, or perhaps Apprentice suggested with growing confidence, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom like a prosecutor's closing argument. There's confusion about whether you were actually there at all. This is falling apart, Riker thought desperately. Drake said this would be simple. Just stick to the script, he said. Nobody would know the difference. Objection, Westlake interjected, jumping to his feet with obvious alarm. His earlier smugness had evaporated completely, replaced by the panic of watching his case collapse in real time. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained, Captain Lell agreed, but his tone carried less conviction than before. The seeds of doubt were already planted. Move on, Mr. Apprentice. Despite the judge's intervention, devastating questions hung in the air like smoke from a battle. Several flag officers in the front row exchanged meaningful glances, their whispered conversations taking on different tones entirely. The rigid military hierarchy suddenly seemed less certain about the prosecution's narrative. The naval intelligence officer in the back row slipped out during the commotion, phone pressed to his ear, making urgent calls that would soon reach the highest echelons of military command. Encrypted communications were already flying between secure terminals in the Pentagon and Naval Special Warfare Command. As the day's session concluded, Westlake's demeanor had transformed from triumphant prosecutor to worried strategist fighting for survival. His JAG team huddled around him in urgent consultation, their confident smiles replaced by furrowed brows and rapid note-taking as they attempted damage control. Sevi remained outwardly calm as military police approached to return her to custody, but keen observers noticed a new alertness in her posture, the subtle shift of a predator sensing wounded prey after months of patient waiting. For the record, what exactly did you see in his uniform? Apprentice asked quietly as they prepared to leave, his voice filled with newfound respect for his client's operational expertise. His trident is mounted incorrectly for someone with his claimed experience level, she replied with quiet satisfaction, her analytical mind cataloging every detail. And he's wearing ribbons for operations that occurred simultaneously in different geographic theaters. Impossible unless he possesses the ability to be in two places at once. Will that be enough to create reasonable doubt in the panel's mind? Sevi shook her head with grim certainty, understanding the larger forces at play. Not for this court-martial, but it might be enough for someone else who's been watching from the shadows. As military police approached, Sevi straightened her shoulders with renewed purpose. Tomorrow would bring consequences her accusers hadn't anticipated. Tomorrow will be very interesting, she said enigmatically, offering no further explanation as they led her away into a night that would prove far shorter than anyone expected. The final day of prosecution testimony dawned with electric tension crackling through Naval Base San Diego. Media presence had tripled overnight as news outlets caught wind of irregularities in the previous day's proceeding. CNN's morning headlines screamed cracks in SEAL fraud case, while Fox News questioned prosecutorial misconduct. The story was evolving beyond simple court-martial into potential military scandal that could reach the highest levels of government. Breaking military tribunal in disarray as witness testimony contradicts official records. Legal experts question classified evidence standards in Navy SEAL trial. Pentagon maintains silence as questions mount about female warrior's case. The media feeding frenzy had reached fever pitch, with satellite trucks lining the base perimeter, and correspondents broadcasting live updates hourly. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere felt fundamentally different. Tension crystallized into something sharper, more dangerous. Gallery members leaned forward with anticipation while reporters clutched notebooks and phones like weapons of war. Television cameras captured every gesture, feeding a national audience hungry for resolution. Sevi appeared more alert despite another night in military detention, her posture radiating newfound confidence that hadn't been present since the trial began. Dark circles still rimmed her eyes, but something had shifted in her bearing, the subtle transformation of someone who sensed the tide turning after months of drowning. Commander Westlake paced before the witness stand with the desperate energy of a prosecutor watching his airtight case develop fatal leaks. His earlier swagger had been replaced by careful calculation as he prepared for what should have been his triumphant conclusion. Chief Petty Officer Riker sat ramrod straight in the witness chair, though keen observers noted perspiration despite the aggressive air conditioning. This is salvageable, Westlake thought desperately as he reviewed his notes. One strong final question, and the jury will forget yesterday's inconsistencies. Stick to the core narrative. So to be absolutely clear, Chief Riker, Westlake said, positioning himself strategically where the gallery could see both him and Sevi. For the record, at no point during the Yemen extraction operation did Lieutenant Commander Blackwood participate in combat actions that would justify her Silver Star citation. Before Riker could deliver what should have been the prosecution's death blow, the courtroom's massive oak doors opened with deliberate measured weight that commanded instant attention. Conversations halted mid-sentence as every head turned toward the entrance in perfect synchronization like a choreographed military movement. Military courtroom proceedings were sacred institutions, never interrupted without extraordinary cause. The massive doors had remained sealed throughout the trial, their sudden opening sending immediate ripples of tension through the packed gallery. Two naval security officers entered first, their professional bearing and alert eyes scanning the room with the efficiency of a Secret Service detail protecting the president. Their presence alone indicated something unprecedented was occurring. Security officers of this caliber only appeared for the highest-level military operations. The unusual interruption sent immediate shockwaves through the assembled crowd. Reporters sensed breaking news developing in real time, while military officers recognized the gravity of unscheduled high-level intervention. Gallery members craned their necks, trying to glimpse whatever force was powerful enough to breach court-martial protocol. Following the security team was a figure whose mere presence commanded instant recognition throughout every corner of the military justice system. Admiral Kingston, Chief of Naval Operations, the Navy's highest-ranking officer and the first woman to hold that position, stepped fully into the courtroom with the bearing of someone accustomed to reshaping reality through sheer force of will. Her four-star shoulder boards caught the morning light streaming through tall windows as she moved with measured, purposeful steps directly toward where Sevie. The sharp click of her dress shoes against polished floors echoed through the stunned silence like rifle shots, each step carrying the weight of impending revelation that would transform everything. Captain Lell rose automatically from his judicial bench, surprise momentarily breaking through 3 decades of courtroom composure. Admiral, this interruption is highly irregular, according to established court-martial protocol. Kingston didn't acknowledge him or even glance in his direction, her laser focus remaining locked on Sevie as she covered the remaining distance with unwavering determination. Kingston reached Sevie's position and stopped with military precision, her presence transforming the courtroom's entire dynamic. Every person in the gallery held their collective breath, sensing they were witnessing history unfold in real time. The silence stretched taut as a bowstring, as Kingston raised her hand in a formal perfect salute that shattered every assumption about the case. Without hesitation, Sevie rose and returned the salute with equal precision, her bearing transforming from accused criminal to honored warrior in that single moment. The gesture carried the weight of milital tradition, respect between equals, and vindication after months of character assassination. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood, Kingston spoke, her voice carrying through the room without needing amplification, each word precisely enunciated. The President of the United States sends his personal regards and regrets that Operation Shadowfall's details cannot be declassified at this time for national security reasons. The courtroom erupted in confused murmurs as the foundation of the prosecution's case crumbled in real time. Reporters frantically scribbled notes while spectators struggled to process the dramatic reversal occurring before their eyes. Kingston turned to face Judge Lell, her bearing making clear she wasn't requesting permission but informing him of presidential authority superseding military court proceedings. Captain Lell, for the record, I have here an executive order signed by the President of the United States. She handed a folder bearing presidential seals to the bailiff, who delivered it to the visibly rattled judge with trembling hands. The gravity of presidential intervention in a military court-martial was unprecedented in modern military justice, representing power that transcended normal legal process. For the record, Kingston announced with absolute authority that silenced even the press corps, these proceedings are hereby suspended by presidential order. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood is being reassigned to classified duties effective immediately. My God, Apprentice thought, watching his client's vindication unfold. She was telling the truth the entire time. Shadowfall was real. Westlake lurched to his feet, his previously confident demeanor crumbling like sandcastles in a tsunami. Admiral, with all due respect, this court has established jurisdiction over. Kingston cut him off with a glare that could freeze molten steel, her voice carrying decades of command authority. Commander Westlake, for the record, your security clearance is hereby revoked pending full investigation. Military police will escort you to processing immediately. 2 MPs moved immediately toward a stunned Westlake, whose face drained of color as the implications crashed over him like Arctic waves. His career, his reputation, everything he'd built was evaporating before his eyes in full view of national media. This can't be happening, Drake thought from the gallery, his mind racing through escape scenarios. If they investigate Westlake, they'll find the connection to me. I need to disappear before they start digging. Commander Drake half rose from his seat in the gallery, then thought better of it when Kingston's gaze swept the room like a searchlight seeking targets. He sank back down, suddenly very interested in studying his hands while calculating how quickly he could reach his offshore account. For the record, Kingston addressed the entire court, her voice carrying undeniable authority that commanded absolute attention. This tribunal was convened based on falsified evidence as part of a deliberate campaign to discredit an American hero. Those responsible will be identified and court-martialed according to the full extent of military justice. Drake and Riker exchanged panicked glances across the room, both men realizing their conspiracy had just collapsed spectacularly. Riker's hand moved unconsciously to adjust his incorrectly placed trident pin, but stopped when he realized the gesture would only draw more attention to his deception. Kingston's tone softened slightly as she continued, though her authority remained absent. The operation Lieutenant Commander Blackwood led rescued 17 hostages, including 2 senators' children, from an enemy black site facility. The details remain classified at the highest levels, but the President has authorized me to confirm her Silver Star citation was earned through extraordinary heroism under fire. Apprentice looked at Savvy in complete amazement, finally understanding the impossible burden she had carried throughout the proceedings. Savvy remained at attention, eyes forward, but something fundamental had changed in her posture, as though an immense weight carried for 18 months had finally been lifted from her shoulders. The vindication was complete, but she maintained military bearing even as her world transformed around her. For the record, Kingston continued, her voice carrying moral authority that transcended rank. You are needed at the Pentagon immediately, Commander. A helicopter is standing by for immediate transport. As Kingston turned to leave, Savvy fell into step behind her with military precision, their synchronized movement reflecting years of shared understanding about duty and sacrifice. The gallery erupted in absolute chaos, journalists shouting questions over each other, officers conferring in urgent whispers, spectators trying to process the dramatic reversal that had just unfolded. Captain Lell banged his gavel repeatedly, his voice lost in the cacophony as he attempted to restore order to a proceeding that had fundamentally transformed in the space of minutes. This court stands in recess pending further orders, he announced, though his words were barely audible above the commotion. At the courtroom door, Kingston paused, turning back to address the room one final time. Her words would echo through military justice proceedings for years to come, setting precedent for how classified operations would be handled in future cases. Let this serve as a reminder to every person in this room and watching across the nation, she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade through silk. The nature of the conflicts we face today means our greatest heroes often serve in absolute silence. Remember that before you question someone's service or sacrifice. As they exited, Savvy noticed Commander Drake being approached by 2 serious-looking officers in civilian suits, Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents whose presence meant his conspiracy was unraveling rapidly. Their eyes met briefly across the chaotic courtroom, and the color drained from Drake's face as he realized the depth of his miscalculation. It's over, Drake thought desperately. Everything's over. They'll trace the payments, find the classified documents, discover the whole network. Outside the courtroom, a phalanx of security personnel created a protective corridor through the gathered media army. Questions flew at them from all directions like artillery shells seeking targets. Admiral Kingston, what exactly is Operation Shadowfall? Commander Blackwood, did you really lead a SEAL team in combat? Is this political interference in military justice? How many hostages were actually rescued? Neither woman acknowledged the barrage of questions as they moved with purposeful determination toward a waiting staff car, their silence speaking volumes about the classified nature of the truth that had just emerged. Only when they were inside the secure vehicle with doors closed and windows tinted for privacy did Kingston's formal demeanor soften slightly, revealing the relief she had kept hidden during the dramatic courtroom intervention. For the record, that was quite a performance, Commander, she said as the car pulled away from the chaos of media and spectators, maintaining your operational security, even when it meant facing complete disgrace and potential imprisonment. I took an oath, Admiral Savvy replied simply, her voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction that had sustained her through months of character assassination. Kingston nodded with evident respect, understanding the cost of such unwavering loyalty. Not everyone remembers their oaths when facing personal consequences of this magnitude. She looked out the window at the naval base passing by, thinking of the classified briefings that had revealed the scope of Drake's conspiracy. Drake wasn't working alone, Savvy said, the name carrying the weight of betrayal and treason. The conspiracy extends beyond one vindictive commanding officer seeking revenge. The investigation will identify all participants, Kingston confirmed grimly. Drake was selling intelligence to private military contractors, compromising ongoing operations. Rather than face espionage charges, he chose to discredit you first. They rode in contemplative silence toward the helicopter landing zone, where a Seahawk waited with rotors already spinning, ready to transport them to Washington for the full presidential briefing. The flight to Washington transformed Sevine's perspective entirely. After 18 months of isolation, scrutiny, and systematic character destruction, the rapid reversal left her processing multiple conflicting emotions. Relief certainly dominated, but underneath burned a simmering anger at how close Drake's conspiracy had come to succeeding, how easily the system had been manipulated against her. When they landed at the Pentagon's secure helicopter pad, another detail met them: serious-faced men and women in dark suits who escorted them through back corridors specifically designed to avoid the press corps that had already gathered at main entrances like a pack of hungry wolves. Kingston's office reflected her personality perfectly, Spartan and functional, with only a few carefully chosen personal touches. Framed photographs of ships she had commanded lined one wall in chronological order, telling the story of her rise through Navy rank. A small model of the first destroyer she had served on as an ensign sat prominently on her desk, a reminder of humble beginnings and steady progress. "At ease, Commander," Kingston said, waving Sevie to a comfortable chair positioned across from her desk. "For the record, we're past military formalities at this point." As Sevie settled into the chair, Kingston poured 2 cups of coffee from a silver carafe on a side table, the simple gesture carrying profound meaning. "Black, if I remember correctly from your personnel file." Sevie accepted the cup with a nod of thanks, the warmth spreading through her palms. The simple gesture of normalcy of being treated as a peer rather than a prisoner nearly undid her carefully maintained composure after months of degradation. Kingston settled behind her desk with her own coffee, her expression serious but no longer formal. "For the record, I apologize for not intervening sooner in these proceedings. We needed to identify everyone involved in the conspiracy before taking action." Drake was selling intelligence to private military contractors, Sevie replied, the coffee cup providing anchor for her emotions. "I discovered proof during Operation Shadowfall, operational details, team movements, extraction coordinates, everything they needed to compromise future missions." Kingston nodded grimly, her jaw tightening at the scope of the betrayal. "And rather than face espionage charges carrying life imprisonment, he chose to discredit you first." Drake understood that no one would readily believe a woman could lead a SEAL operation. He used society's inherent bias as perfect cover for his treason, Sevie said without bitterness, merely stating tactical fact. The skepticism about women in special operations provided the perfect smokescreen for his criminal activity. Kingston's smile was razor-sharp, carrying years of her own battles against institutional bias. "The arrogance of mediocre men never ceases to amaze me. He's facing 20 years minimum in federal prison, and Riker never served a single day in special operations. Drake recruited him from administrative duty, built him a completely false identity." Later that evening, in a secure briefing room deep within the Pentagon's most classified levels, Sevie stood before a panel that included the Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, and several other officials whose identities remained compartmentalized even from her security clearance. For 3 intensive hours, she detailed Operation Shadowfall, with surgical precision, the intelligence gathering that led to discovering the hostage site, the improvised extraction when the primary plan failed due to enemy countermeasures, and the damning evidence of Drake's treachery she had uncovered during the mission. When she finished, the room remained silent for a long moment, the weight of her testimony settling over officials who had spent months believing carefully constructed lies. Finally, the Secretary of Defense spoke, his voice carrying genuine regret. "Commander Blackwood, I believe I speak for everyone present when I say we owe you a profound apology. The system failed you completely." "For the record, sir," she replied with characteristic directness, "the system worked eventually. That's what matters." As the officials filed out, one remained behind, a silver-haired man in civilian clothes whose security badge indicated the highest possible clearance levels. When they were alone, he smiled with genuine respect. "You showed remarkable restraint, Commander," he said quietly. "Most people would have broken operational security to save themselves from destruction. With respect, sir, that was never an option I could consider." He nodded approvingly, and slid a sealed folder across the polished table. "Your eyes only. Consider this an opportunity to rebuild what Commander Drake tried to destroy,
and to ensure it never happens again.
6 months later, Naval Special Warfare Command at Coronado basked in early morning Pacific light. Fog rolled in from the ocean, shrouding the beach where Boadacious trainees were already deep into their morning evolution, their shouts and instructor responses carrying faintly across the distance like echoes of her own training years ago. Commander Severine Blackwood walked the perimeter of the training grounds, her uniform bearing the oak leaf of her new rank, a promotion that came with the classified assignment from the president. The scar running from temple to jaw caught the sunlight as she turned to observe a group struggling with log PT exercises, no longer hidden beneath makeup or strategic styling. The classified assignment had kept her busy, leading a joint task force combining elements from multiple special operations communities, focused on countering the very network of private military contractors that Drake had been selling information to. The work remained in shadows, just as she preferred, but her public vindication had created something unexpected. Commander Blackwood. Sevy turned to find a young female ensign, approaching, clearly nervous but determined, her bearing suggesting hours of preparation for this moment. Ensign Merritt, ma'am. I've been hoping to meet you. I'm preparing for SEAL qualification assessment next month. For the record, that gives you 4 weeks to improve your water confidence, Sevy replied, noticing the slight hesitation in Merritt's expression and the telltale signs of recent pool training. The underwater knot-tying evolution is where most candidates struggle initially. Merritt's eyes widened with surprise and respect. How did you know that was my primary concern? Your hands. Sevy gestured with practiced observation skills. You've been practicing extensively. The skin around your knuckles shows repeated rope work. As they walked along the training grounds, more female candidates appeared as if drawn by invisible signals. Word had spread through the base's communication networks that Commander Blackwood was visiting. They approached cautiously at first, then with growing confidence as Sevy answered their questions about training philosophy, overcoming institutional obstacles and belonging in spaces historically designed to exclude them. Is it true you had to complete twice as many pull-ups as the men in your qualification class? One candidate asked earnestly. For the record, no one progresses through selection by performing minimum standards. Sevy replied with characteristic directness. Male or female, excellence is the only acceptable standard. Did you ever feel like quitting during the training? Asked another, vulnerability evident in her voice. Every single day, Sevy answered honestly. So did everyone else in the class. The difference lies in who acknowledges that feeling and pushes through anyway. A third candidate, who had remained quiet during the exchange, finally spoke up with the question they all wanted answered. How did you handle it? Knowing that even after you proved yourself completely, they still tried to take everything away from you. The group fell silent, aware they had ventured into sensitive territory that defined the modern military experience for women in combat roles. Sevy studied the young woman who had asked, recognizing the genuine need behind the question and the courage required to voice it. By remembering why I was there in the first place, she said, her voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. Not for recognition, not to be the first or only woman, but because there was critical work that needed doing, and I was fully capable of doing it effectively. She looked around at their faces, seeing herself reflected in their determination and uncertainty. For the record, remember this. It's not about being the first or the only. It's about making sure you're not the last, and that the door stays open for those who follow. In the distance, a helicopter approached the landing pad near the command building. The candidates dispersed, returning to their training with renewed purpose and visible determination in their stride. As Sevy watched them go, she reflected on the young women who had approached her, their questions, their fears, their unwavering determination to succeed despite institutional resistance. The future was taking shape, one determined candidate at a time, each carrying forward the legacy of those who had fought before them.